What is going on, everybody? What is going on, the Catch fam? My name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we will be going through my early 2022 fantasy football rankings for the wide receiver position. In today's video, we are going through receivers number 1 through number 12. I'm super excited to hop into our official early rankings. If you do enjoy today's content, make sure to hit that like button down below. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Come join the Catch fam on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And of course, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of my overall list. Today I will be dropping numbers 13 through 24 in the next coming days, as well as every other positional group moving forward in the month of June. Without further ado, let's hop into today's content. Number 1, no real big surprise here. I've got Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams. I don't think you're going to see many fantasy football rankings out there where Cooper Kupp is not number 1. There's definitely going to be the argument that Cooper Kupp is going to face some regression in 2022 after the absolute monster season he had last season. 191 targets, 145 receptions, 1,947 receiving yards, and 16 total touchdowns. Just a lights out year for Cooper Kupp with his new quarterback Matthew Stafford. And for me, that is the biggest part of the equation moving into 2022. Not only is Cooper Kupp returning with Matthew Stafford for the coming fantasy football season, but he also just got a massive extension. There is no way that Sean McVay in the front office will not be feeding Cooper Kupp the football on a continuous basis throughout the season. I think he is going to be a PPR monster. It's definitely natural that he will have some regression in the touchdown category, more than likely in the receiving yards category as well, as he had career highs in every category in 2021. Just a ridiculous year. Listen, I get it. If you don't want to draft Kupp as your number 1 receiver because you're too scared of regression, that is totally understandable. But in terms of rankings, there is just no way I cannot put Cooper Kupp number 1 after what he did last season. That is really, there's all to say. I think regardless of regression, he is going to have another incredible football season in 2022. Even if he does regress in every category, he is still going to be a lock for a number 1 receiver on your fantasy roster moving into 2022. All right, second on the list, we got my guy Justin Jefferson. Listen, I have been in love with Justin Jefferson all off season long, tooting the horn for him to be much higher in overall rankings. And at this point in the offseason, we are seeing him come in at the number 2 spot, the number 3 spot, the number 4 spot in a lot of fantasy rankings, and I absolutely 110% believe he should be there. He had a phenomenal sophomore season in 2021, 167 targets, 108 receptions, just over 1,600 receiving yards, and 10 total scores. And he comes back into the 2022 fantasy football season with Kirk Cousins. They've established that chemistry, and that is so important to me at the wide receiver position. I see no negative outlook for Justin Jefferson whatsoever. He's not due for a ton of regression. He improved from his rookie season into his sophomore season, and I think coming into his junior season, he could easily improve in every category as well. The Vikings offense isn't incredibly sexy on paper by any means, but they are still a very relevant offense when it comes to fantasy football. And I think that overall JJ is just going to have another incredibly consistent year. Yes, he has plenty of games where he is going to get you over 20 fantasy points, but outside of that, essentially, he is just a lock for double-digit fantasy points on a weekly basis, and I love him as my number 2 receiver going into the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, third on my list, we've got Ja'Marr Chase going into his sophomore season after that incredible, freakish, fantastic rookie season he had in 2021. 128 total targets, just 81 receptions, a little bit lower on the reception mark, but keep in mind that he had a lot of those deep balls come his way as well. Over 1,450 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. Once again, touching on overall chemistry. I don't know if there's going to be a better duo in the NFL in the next coming years at the quarterback and receiver position other than Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. I am so incredibly excited to see what Ja'Marr Chase does in his sophomore season. We just talked about Justin Jefferson making huge strides from his rookie season to his sophomore season. I think that Ja'Marr Chase will easily be able to make strides within that offense. You bolster up that offensive line in the offseason. I think that is going to help Joe Burrow be able to deliver a lot of good footballs, even more than he did so last season. I think Ja'Marr Chase is absolutely going to eat here in the 2022 fantasy football season. You could easily argue that Chase could be wide receiver 2, and if you really wanted to have fun, wide receiver 1 as well. He just presents such consistent upside. Look at what he did through that first half of the fantasy football season last year. He was just an absolute monster, and there's no reason why he will not finish as a top 5 receiver in 2022. In my mind, I've easily got him as a lock as my wide receiver 3 going into the 2022 fantasy football season. Number 4 on the list, I've got Davante Adams with a bit of a change of scenery. Listen, at the end of the day, Adams finished as your wide receiver 2 in full PPR scoring format last season, number 5 in standard scoring format as well. 169 targets, 123 receptions, just over 1,500 receiving yards, and 11 touchdowns. He's been such an incredible fantasy football player since 2016, and I get it. Every single season he's been with Aaron Rodgers. He's had that incredible chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. I get it, guys. I know that a lot of fantasy managers feel hesitant about Davante Adams moving into the 2022 fantasy football season, but he has already established phenomenal chemistry with Derek Carr. I get it. It's been some time since they played together, but overall, I really do think that that chemistry and friendship is going to shine through. I think that Adams is a lock for over 1,200 receiving yards and at worst 8 touchdowns. I think he's really going to help this offense overall, and I won't be surprised if he amasses 1,200 receiving yards and double-digit touchdowns as well. I'm not worried about Davante Adams. He moves back slightly overall in rankings. I think if he's stuck with Green Bay, you could argue he would be in the top 3, but I've got no problem moving Adams up a little bit higher. We've done so many mock drafts here at the Catch in the offseason. We've seen Adams go anywhere from wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 6 or 7. So it just depends on your own personal conviction. But for me, heading into 2022, I'm happy to put him as my wide receiver 4. And I'll just leave it at that, short and sweet. He has been one of the best receivers in the NFL for the past couple of years, and I'm not ready to doubt him whatsoever. Number 5 on the list, we've got Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. Came in as wide receiver 7 in full PPR last season, wide receiver 8 in standard scoring format. Overall, 163 targets, 103 receptions, just over 1,200 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. But you really didn't hear a lot of buzz about Stefon Diggs. He wasn't having those crazy flashy games like a Ja'Marr Chase, a Justin Jefferson, a Cooper Kupp, DEEBO Samuel. He was incredibly consistent at the end of the day, though, and I think he will continue to be one of the most consistent receivers in the 2022 fantasy football season. He comes back, obviously, with the Bills getting that 4-year extension, but outside of that, he is coming back into 2022 with Josh Allen at the quarterback position. They have a beautiful chemistry overall, and if you are bullish on the Bills offense in terms of them being one of, if not the best offenses in the entire league in 2022, then why would you not have Diggs higher? We've seen him slide in so many mock drafts into the mid-second round, into the end of the second round, and I hate seeing that to some degree, but at the end of the day, I really like seeing it because I would love to land Diggs in the second round by all means. I'm happy to have him as my wide receiver 5. There are a lot of receivers on today's list that I believe are just slept on in general, but I think Diggs might be the biggest receiver in terms of a receiver that's just consistently slept on regardless of how he performs. I think 2022, arguably, he might have the potential to have his best season yet, and I have no problem whatsoever putting him at number 5 on my early 2022 fantasy football rankings at the wide receiver position. All right, number 6 on today's list, we've got Tyreek Hill with a change of scenery, moving to the Miami Dolphins. Came in as wide receiver 6 in full PPR last season, wide receiver 7 in standard scoring format, so I really don't feel bad whatsoever about having him as my wide receiver 6 in these early rankings. Overall, 159 targets, 111 receptions, just over 1,200 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. It felt like a little bit of a down year for the Chiefs from a fantasy perspective when you look at guys like Patty Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, but overall, they still had phenomenal seasons. We were just used to holding players of that caliber to such a high standard, and I get it, guys. A lot of people hesitant with the change of scenery and the change of quarterback going from the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, to a new offense with our guy McDaniels over there in Miami and my guy Tua Time, who you guys know that I've been a big supporter of, but you know, he's no Patty Mahomes. So I totally get it, guys. I know that there's going to be a lot of fantasy managers who are just going to pass on Tyreek Hill. We've seen him fall in so many mock drafts to the end of the second round, and I get it. He's an upside play regardless of what team he's on. He's a boomer bust potential type guy, but when he hits, he is going to hit. On a weekly basis, he has uncapped upside. He can get you 40 points. I don't care who the QB is, guys. I really don't. I'm all for Tyreek Hill. I think he's better suited as a wide receiver 2 on your roster if you want to go double receiver. But at the end of the day, I think you can still take him in the second round as your first receiver off the board and then hit on the right guys in later rounds as well. So I think he still holds incredible fantasy value, and I'm not letting myself be too concerned with the change of scenery. Although I'm definitely more comfortable with Davante Adams' change of scenery overall, I am not going to let myself get too worried about Tyreek Hill, and I'm happy to put him at number 6 on my early rankings heading into the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, number 7, we've got DEEBO Samuel, and I will definitely make a note that overall, DEEBO, out of all the receivers we're going to talk about in today's video, has the ability to move up on the list overall and move back on the list overall. But just due to the potential upside that he carries, there's no way that I can't have him, I would say, past 7 overall. You could argue that he should still be in the top 5. You could argue that he should be in the back 10. I get it. He's in a very unique spot at this point in the offseason, but we just can't overlook that he was wide receiver 3 in PPR last season, wide receiver 2 in standard scoring formats, 120 targets, 77 receptions, over 1,400 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's not even including what he did in the run game as well. So it's a very shaky situation. I do think he has a good chance to return to the Niners. I don't know how long he's going to hold out. I don't think a trade is really on the horizon, at least in this coming season, but who knows? I think that none of us know right now. And as we get closer and closer to the regular season, we should have a better idea. He can easily move up 2 or 3 spots on this list. He can easily move back 2 or 3 spots on this list, but short and sweet, we've got to keep DEEBO on our radar, and he should still be in the top 10 regardless of what happens, in my humble opinion. He's not my favorite player to go out and target at this point in the offseason, but you just can't doubt and overlook what he did in 2021, and I'm happy to have him in the top 10 for our early 2022 fantasy football rankings. All right, number 8 on the list, we've got CeeDee Lamb. And if you look at the last 2 receivers we just talked about, Tyreek Hill and DEEBO Samuel, you're really going for upside with both of those guys. I think what CeeDee Lamb is going to offer in the 2022 fantasy football season is a lot of consistency. Obviously, you have Amari Cooper out of the picture. You've got Michael Gallup as a wide receiver 2, James Washington as a wide receiver 3, Zeke and Pollard doing their thing, and then Dalton Schultz, a very productive tight end as well. But at the end of the day, I think that CeeDee Lamb is 1,000% going to be Dak Prescott's primary target. I think in full PPR scoring formats, he is going to garner a ton of targets throughout the season and going to be able to provide a ton of consistency. We really liked him last offseason as a receiver who had potential to really break out in his sophomore season. He did progress in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns, but there wasn't a lot of crazy progression from his rookie season. So I'm going to give him another chance moving into 2022 to have the potential to really break out. When you look at what he did last season, 120 targets, 79 receptions, just over 1,100 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. He did miss 2 games last season, came in as wide receiver 19 in PPR, wide receiver 13 in standard scoring format. So not necessarily phenomenal numbers overall, but at the end of the day, he's going to be Dak's number 1 target, going to be the number 1 target in the Cowboys offense, which I think is kind of being overlooked at this point in the current offseason. And I just like CeeDee overall in terms of what I think will be a nice consistency factor. And I think he's got pretty good value overall where you can currently draft him. You are able to land him at the end of the second round, beginning of the third in some circumstances as well. So I think he's got good value, and I absolutely think he's on pace to be a very consistent PPR style receiver next season with some nice upside at times too. So like I said, I'm looking for him to break out in his junior season, and I certainly hope that he does so because we really liked him going into his sophomore season. At the end of the day, he's a younger receiver, so he takes the edge off of some of the receivers we're about to talk about in terms of consistency and what he's going to offer. And I think he's perfectly placed at number 8 overall on today's list. All right, speaking of consistency, at number 9, we got my guy, Mike Evans. I don't care how old he is. I don't care what your opinion is of him. I don't care how old Tom Brady is. Guys, we cannot continue to doubt Mike Evans year after year after year. We do it. Plenty of us did it heading into the 2021 fantasy football season. And he had arguably his best season of all time. 114 targets, 74 receptions, just over 1,000 receiving yards. But most importantly, 14 touchdowns, guys. Tom Brady, okay? You guys know Tom Brady trusts Mike Evans in the red zone, okay? Number 9 in PPR last season, number 6 in standard scoring formats last season. Godwin is going to miss time this year. Don't get me wrong, I like Russell Gage a lot. I like other pieces of this offense, but just please, can we please stop sleeping on Mike Evans? I think he's perfectly placed. I think you could argue he could be a little bit higher. I don't have a problem with that. I got nothing bad to say about Mike Evans. I think he's a steal as either a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2 for your fantasy rosters heading into 2022. I don't have much else to say about it. I think that the Buccaneers offense will continue to be very good in 2022. They've got a relatively favorable schedule. I think that Tom Brady will be just fine. I don't care how old Mike Evans is. I don't care how old Tom Brady is. I have nothing bad to say about Mike Evans. Please, 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 let's stop sleeping on Mike Evans. Let's be bullish on Mike Evans heading into the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, speaking of receivers who I don't care how old they are, I don't care about the veteran status, I don't care how much they get slept on. Can we please stop sleeping on Keenan Allen as well, who I've got number 10 on today's list. Came in as wide receiver 10 in full PPR last season, wide receiver 15 in standard scoring formats, 157 targets last season, the second most all time, 106 receptions, just over 1,100 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. A very consistent year, a very good year overall. Listen, a lot of you guys, and myself included, are feeling very good about the Chargers offense moving into 2022 for good reason. Justin Herbert continuing to progress at the QB position. We saw that last season. I don't think he's going to take any steps back next season. And listen, Keenan Allen is that security blanket, okay? He is going to have another extremely consistent season, in my opinion. Mike Williams offers that upside. You've got other pieces on this offense, don't get me wrong. Austin Eckler, the running back room looks good overall. Like I said, Mike Williams offers that nice upside, that big play availability. Jalen Guyton, Joshua Palmer, both showed plenty of flashes last season as well, but Keenan Allen is that guy for this offense. He is the #1 read for Herbert, and I just think there's no way you can sleep on him moving into the 2022 fantasy football season. And there's 2 guys I don't want anyone to sleep on. It's Mike Evans and it's Keenan Allen. And let's move on with the list, man. All right, this is where you guys can roast me in the comments down below. This is where you guys can come at me. Listen, I was super high on Metcalf. Last season, he came in as wide receiver 14 overall in PPR, came in as wide receiver 11 in standard last season. Okay, I get it. A lot of you guys are going to disagree with this one. My co-host Steven disagrees with this one on me. And for whatever reason, I just like DK Metcalf, okay? Last season, I had him ahead of a couple receivers that a lot of people disagreed with, and overall, he beat out most of those receivers. And I get it, guys. Russell Wilson's gone. It's a big change of scenery overall. You got Drew Lock at QB right now and Geno Smith. Okay, I get it. It's not pretty. But I think at the end of the day, regardless of how bad this offense is, it's going to have to move through Metcalf. Tyler Lockett offers that big play ability. You've got a decent running back room between Rashad Penny and Walker. I don't know that it looks so good for Chris Carson at the moment, but I do think that the Hawks are going to try and run the football quite a bit. And listen, I think Noah Fant is part of the equation as well, but that's another discussion for another day. At the end of the day, man, like I said, Metcalf's still a top 15 receiver last season, and he did play some games without Russell Wilson. Put that asterisk in there. Overall, man, 129 targets, second year in a row, 75 receptions, 967 receiving yards, and 12 touchdowns, which was a career high. So receiving yards, not too incredibly great, and the receptions, not great as well, but overall, he amasses the most targets on this team as a whole, and I love those double-digit touchdowns. And listen, guys, I get it. A lot of you guys aren't going to be where I am on this one, but I just like Metcalf. I like his fantasy value. I like where you can select him in drafts as well. And overall, I think in my tier, in my rankings, he's a little bit higher, and you can go out and you can target him a little bit later as well. And he's a receiver I've been landing as a wide receiver 2, sometimes a wide receiver 3 in a ton of our mock drafts, and I feel completely confident in that. Listen, like I said, roast me in the comments down below if you don't agree with this one, but I've got Metcalf at 11, and I'm sticking with it. Like I always tell you guys, trust your gut, trust your own conviction. Don't fall in love too much with ADP. You've got to go with that gut instinct, and right now, my gut instincts got Metcalf going as wide receiver 11 in our early 2022 fantasy football rankings. All right, number 12, I've got A.J. Brown with a change of scenery going to the Philadelphia Eagles. I love this move for the Eagles. I love this move for A.J. Brown overall. And listen, A.J. Brown is going a lot higher in a lot of rankings out there and a lot of mock drafts out there as well, just because he offers such great upside, similar to what we talked about with Tyreek Hill, right? You might not like him as your wide receiver 1. You might want to use him as a wide receiver 2 or a flex option throughout the season, but you have to draft them a little bit earlier. I mean, same goes for A.J. Brown, right? You might feel more comfortable if he's your wide receiver 2 or your flex option, because he does offer a ton of boomer bust potential and a ton of upside at the same time. But also the bigger issue with A.J. Brown is the inconsistency in terms of when he is going to be on the field or not on the field. And for me personally, that's why I have him a little bit lower overall. I don't mind the change of scenery whatsoever. Feel very good about the Eagles offense going into 2022. Don't have any issues going from Ryan Tannehill and the Titans to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. I think that A.J. Brown will have a good season, but like I said, what worries me is the inconsistency of when he is on the field. And for me, that drops him back a little bit on my personal rankings. Came in as wide receiver 32 in PPR and standard formats last season. 105 targets, 63 receptions, 869 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. But you do have to look through some of those games. You know, he was getting you those big point potential. 27 points in week 7, 31.5 points in week 8, and 31.5 points again in week 16. But he missed time. He had a lot of poor performances in between as well. So guys, I get it. It's just a boomer bust play for me. I'm not 100% there, but if you are there and you want that big play potential in a guy like A.J. Brown, perfectly okay to draft him a little bit earlier on in your draft, but you're going to have to hit on the right receivers in some later rounds overall. And for me, the injuries overall just put A.J. Brown a little bit further back. For me personally, I am much more bullish on where you can draft DeVonta Smith overall, but that's another topic for another day. And that will finish out our top 12 early rankings for the wide receiver position going into the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, guys, make sure to let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of my top 12 list overall. I will have numbers 13 through 24 coming out shortly within the coming days. This past week, we focused on the topic of different receiver groups, so make sure you guys go and check out some of our uploads from earlier in the week. And of course, if you guys want to join one of our subscriber mock drafts, make sure you guys join our Discord page. Link is in the description down below, completely free to join. We would love to have you guys in some of our Catch Fam mock drafts. If you did enjoy today's content, of course, hit that like button down below and hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers here at the Catch. Come join the Catch Fam. And that'll do it for today's content. With that, I say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on the Catch.